a cold steel bench. The sterile, unforgiving scent of disinfectant filled the air. For Kai Ellison, this was the end of a night that began with charcoal sketches and dreams of art school. Handcuffed and processed like a common criminal, his pleas of innocence were met with mocking laughter. The officers saw a black teenager in a worn-out car and built their own narrative of guilt. They did not know the boy in their holding cell, the one they had targeted and tormented, was about to make a single phone call that would detonate their careers, their department, and their entire world. They locked him up, believing they were untouchable. They were wrong. The night was cool and quiet, the kind of stillness that settles over the suburbs long after the last commuter train has pulled away. Kai Ellison drove his mother's sedan, the engine humming a familiar, comforting tune. The passenger seat was littered with art supplies, sticks of willow charcoal, a portfolio of sketches, and a brand new set of oil paints he had saved up for. He was heading home from a late session at a friend's makeshift studio, his mind buzzing with color theory and composition, not the looming threat of authority. He was humming along to a song on the radio, thinking about the texture of the canvas he had stretched earlier, when the world behind him exploded in a silent kaleidoscope of red and blue. His heart hammered against his ribs, a sudden primal fear that every black man is taught to feel before he even learns to drive. He checked his speedometer, exactly the speed limit. He signaled, pulled over to the curb smoothly, and placed his hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, just as his father had drilled into him countless times. Two officers emerged from the patrol car, their silhouettes stark against the blinding headlights. The older one, a man with a thick neck and a swagger that spoke of unshakable confidence, approached the driver's side. His name tag read Vance. The younger officer, Tate, hung back by the passenger door, his hand resting near his sidearm, his eyes scanning the interior of the car with nervous energy. "Evening," Officer Vance said, his voice laced with a bored sort of condescension. He leaned down, peering into the car. "You know why I pulled you over?" "No, officer, I don't," Kai replied, keeping his voice even and respectful. "Your left tail light is out," Vance stated flatly. Kai knew for a fact it was not. He and his dad had checked all the lights recently, but he also knew this was not the time to argue. "I'm sorry to hear that, officer. I wasn't aware," Kai said. "License and registration." "License, registration, and proof of insurance. And keep your hands where I can see them," Vance ordered, his flashlight beam dancing across Kai's face. Then into the car, lingering on the art supplies. Kai moved slowly, deliberately. He retrieved the documents from the glove compartment and handed them over. Vance snatched them, his eyes barely glancing at the name before returning his focus to the car's interior. "What's all this junk?" Vance asked, pointing the flashlight at the portfolio. "They're my art supplies, sir. I'm coming from a friend's house." "Art supplies," Vance scoffed, sharing a smirk with Tate. "Right. What's your real business out here tonight?" "Son." The word son was a barb, not an endearment. "I'm a student. I was just heading home," Kai insisted, the frustration starting to bubble beneath his calm exterior. "We'll see about that," Vance said. He handed the documents to Tate. "Run his name." Then he turned back to Kai. "Step out of the car, please." Kai's blood ran cold. "Officer, am I being detained?" "What for?" "For a broken tail light and for me telling you to." "Now get out of the vehicle slowly." Kai complied, his body rigid with a mixture of fear and indignation. As soon as he was standing, Vance roughly pushed him against the side of the car. "Spread him." "You have no reason to do this," Kai said, his voice shaking slightly. "I'll be the judge of that," Vance grunted, patting him down with unnecessary force. He found nothing but a wallet and the phone. While Vance was searching him, Tate began rummaging through the passenger seat. "Hey, reelin', look at this," Tate called out. He held up a palette knife, its metal edge glinting in the strobing lights. "Could be a weapon." Vance's eyes lit up with a sick sense of victory. Well, Looks like our little artist came prepared for more than just painting. That's a palette knife. It's for mixing paint, Kai exclaimed, his voice rising in disbelief. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious, Vance snarled, yanking Kai's arms behind his back. You're carrying a concealed weapon, and you fit the description of a suspect in a string of break-ins in this area. It was a lie, a complete fabrication, and they both knew it. There was no description. There was only Kai, a black teenager in the wrong place at the wrong time in front of the wrong cop. This is insane, Kai pleaded, looking at Tate, hoping for a shred of reason. Tell him you know what that is. Tate looked away, his face unreadable. He remained silent. The cold, sharp click of the handcuffs locking around Kai's wrists was a sound of finality. It was the sound of his identity being stripped away, replaced by a profile, a statistic. Vance shoved him toward the back of the patrol car. You have the right to remain silent, Vance began, the words a hollow mockery of justice. As the car door slammed shut, trapping him in the cramped plastic-molded seat, Kai looked out at his mother's car, its perfectly functional tail light glowing a defiant red in the darkness. In that moment, he was not the governor's son. He was not an artist or a student. He was just another black body in the system, swallowed by the glare of red and blue. The precinct was a monument to bureaucratic indifference. The air hung thick with the smells of stale coffee, cheap disinfectant, and a faint underlying metallic tang of fear. Officer Vance paraded Kai through the main bullpen as if he were a prize catch, his hand clamped firmly on Kai's shoulder. The few officers still on duty barely looked up from their paperwork, their faces etched with the weary cynicism of the night shift. Got another one, Vance announced to the desk sergeant, a portly gray-haired man named Fletcher. Caught him prowling. Armed with this, he dropped the palette knife into a plastic evidence bag with a theatrical flourish. Sergeant Fletcher peered at the knife, then at Kai, his gaze dismissive. An artist, huh? What was he going to do? Paint a masterpiece on the side of a house he was robbing. He chuckled a dry, humorless laugh. Something like that, Vance said, shoving Kai toward the booking desk. Let's get him processed. The next hour was a blur of calculated humiliation. Kai was ordered to remove his shoes and his belt. His pockets were emptied, their meager contents a tube of chapstick, a few dollars, and a key to his house cataloged and sealed away. He was fingerprinted, the cold, sticky ink coating his fingers, staining the very skin he used to create. The camera for the mugshot flashed, capturing not a person, but a suspect. Head forward, then profile, his expression a mixture of disbelief and simmering rage. Through it all, Kai tried to maintain his composure. You have the wrong person, he said to Sergeant Fletcher, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. My name is Kai Ellison. My father is... Fletcher cut him off with a wave of his hand. Yeah, I've heard it all before, kid. My father's a lawyer. My uncle's a judge. Save it. You get one phone call after you're in the cell. They led him down a short echoing hallway to the holding cells. The clang of the heavy metal door shutting behind him was deafening, a sound of absolute finality. The cell was tiny, cold, and smelled faintly of vomit and despair. A single metal bench was bolted to the wall. He sat down, the cold seeping through his jeans, and put his head in his hands. Back in the patrol car, Officer Tate drove in silence, the tension thick enough to cut with the palette knife now sitting in evidence. Vance, on the other hand, was buzzing, high on the adrenaline of the arrest. See how easy that was, Vance said, tapping a rhythm on the dashboard. Textbook. Kid was lippy, had a weapon, matched the bolo we got last week. There was no bolo. Reelin', Tate said quietly, his eyes fixed on the road. And you know that was a painting tool. Details. Vance scoffed. It's a blade, isn't it? He's a punk. Looked suspicious the second I saw him. My gut is never wrong. We put a good arrest on the books tonight. The lieutenant will be pleased. Tate did not respond. He felt a knot tightening in his stomach. He had seen Vance do this before, escalate a minor stop, invent a pretext, and bully his way to an arrest. Tate was only on the force, and Vance was his training officer, a respected veteran. Questioning him meant trouble, meant being labeled soft, meant risking his own career. So he stayed quiet just as he had on the side of the road. But the image of Kai's face, the genuine shock and betrayal in his eyes, was seared into his mind. This felt different. This felt wrong. In his cell, Kai was finally given his phone call. The guard led him to a grimy phone bolted to the wall. He dialed his father's personal number, his heart pounding with a desperate hope. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then went to voicemail. "You've reached Victor Ellison. Please leave a message." Kai's throat tightened. His father was likely in a late-budget meeting. His phone silenced. "Dad," Kai began, his voice cracking. "Dad, it's me. I've been arrested. I'm at the Northwood precinct. Some cop named Vance. He said my taillight was out. But it wasn't. He found my palette knife and called it a weapon. Dad, I didn't do anything. Please call me back. I don't know what to do." He hung up the phone, the feeling of hopelessness washing over him like an icy wave. The guard led him back to the cell, the metal door groaning shut once more. He was alone, trapped inside the cold, impersonal machinery of a system that had already decided who he was, and the one person who could help him had no idea he was even there. Governor Victor Ellison rubbed his temples, the fluorescent lights of the conference room leaving a dull ache behind his eyes. The state budget meeting had dragged on for hours, a grueling marathon of fiscal projections and political compromises. Finally, the meeting had ended. He walked wearily back to his private office in the Capitol building, loosening his tie. All he wanted was to go home, pour a small glass of whiskey, and forget about state deficits until morning. He sank into his leather chair and picked up his phone, wincing at the string of missed notifications. Most were from his chief of staff and various department heads, but one stood out, a missed call and a voicemail from Kai. A small smile touched his lips. He imagined Kai was calling to complain about his mom's car or to ask for money for more art supplies. He pressed play on the voicemail, leaning back in his chair. The sound of his son's voice, strained and cracking with fear, shot him upright. "Dad, I've been arrested. Northwood precinct. Vance, palette knife, a weapon. I didn't do anything." The world around Victor Ellison went silent. The budget, the state, the late hour, it all vanished. The governor disappeared, and in his place was only a father, his heart seized by a cold, terrifying dread. He played the message again, listening to every tremble, every desperate word. Northwood, that was a quiet, affluent suburb. What in God's name was going on? His mind raced, piecing it together. Kai, driving his mother's unassuming car, profiled and pulled over. An ambitious or prejudiced cop escalating the situation. It was a story he had heard 1,000 times, a reality he had fought against his entire political career. He had always tried to shield his son from the harsh realities that came with being a young black man in America. But the world had found him anyway. A wave of pure, unadulterated fury washed over him, so intense it made his hands shake. But he suppressed it, channeling it into a cold, hard resolve. Panic was a luxury he could not afford. Action was required. He did not call his security detail or his attorney first. His first call was to the superintendent of the state police, a man he knew well, Colonel Hargrove. "This is Governor Ellison. I apologize for the late hour. Governor, no apology necessary. What can I do for you?" Hargrove's voice was instantly alert. "I need you to get me the personal cell number for Chief Donovan of the Northwood Police Department. Immediately." There was a brief pause. "Is everything all right?" "Sir, no. Colonel, it is not. My son has been arrested and is being held at the Northwood precinct. I want Chief Donovan's number, and I want you to have a state trooper meet me there. Unmarked car. No sirens. Right away. Governor." Within a minute, his phone buzzed with a text message containing the number. He dialed it without hesitation. It was answered on the second ring by a groggy voice. "Donovan, Chief Donovan. "This is Governor Victor Ellison." The fogginess in the chief's voice evaporated instantly. "Governor, to what do I owe the honor? Is everything okay?" "No, Chief, it is not," Victor said, his voice dangerously quiet. "I just received a voicemail from my son, Kai Ellison. He tells me he's currently a guest in one of your holding cells, arrested by an officer named Vance. Perhaps you can explain to me why my son, an art student with no criminal record, was arrested tonight for carrying a palette knife." The silence on the other end of the line was profound. Victor could practically hear the gears turning in Donovan's head, the frantic search for information, the dawning horror. "Governor, I had no idea," Donovan stammered. "I'm not at the precinct. I haven't been briefed on the night's arrests." "Then I suggest you get briefed, Chief, and I suggest you do it quickly." Victor's voice was like ice. "I am on my way to your station right now. I expect my son to be waiting for me in your office, unharmed, and I expect a full and complete explanation for this incident. Am I making myself clear?" "Crystal clear, Governor. I'm on my way now." "I'll handle it personally," Donovan assured him, his voice now tight with panic. Victor Ellison hung up the phone without another word. He stood up, grabbed his coat, and walked out of his office. The political mask was gone. The calm, measured negotiator had been replaced by something far more formidable, a father whose child was in trouble. The Northwood Police Department had just arrested a boy. They were about to face the man who ran the state. The Northwood precinct remained an island of mundane activity, oblivious to the storm gathering on the horizon. Officer Ryland Vance was at his desk typing up his incident report with a self-satisfied smirk. He embellished with practiced ease, turning a simple traffic stop into a proactive measure against potential crime. He described Kai's confusion as evasiveness and his pleas of innocence as belligerence. The palette knife was logged as a modified blade concealed within the vehicle. It was a work of fiction designed to justify his actions, a fortress of words to protect him from any scrutiny. His partner, Evan Tate, sat at the adjacent desk, staring at a blank screen. He had not written a single word of his own supplementary report. The unease in his gut had grown into a nauseating dread. Every word Vance typed felt like another brick being laid in a wall of lies, and Tate knew he was being cemented inside it with him. "You should get that report done," Vance said without looking up from his screen. "The sooner it's filed, the sooner we can forget about this punk." "I'm just thinking," Tate mumbled. "Don't think too hard," Vance advised. It was a good bust. End of story. At the front desk, Sergeant Fletcher was halfway through a crossword puzzle when the phone rang. It was the chief's administrative line, which was unusual at this hour. He answered with a gruff Fletcher. The voice on the other end was frantic. "Sergeant, this is dispatch. The chief is en route to the station. He's asking for the arrest report for a Kai Ellison." Fletcher frowned, the name ringing a vague bell. Nash. "Oh, the artist kid Vance brought in an hour ago. What's the chief want with that for?" "I don't know, but he sounds agitated," the dispatcher said. "He wants the arresting officers, Vance and Tate, to meet him in his office the second he arrives." Fletcher hung up, bewildered. He lumbered over to Vance's desk. "Hey, Vance, the chief is on his way in. He wants to see you and Tate about your arrest tonight." "The Ellison kid." Vance looked up from his report, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. "What did the kid's mommy call to complain? What's so damn important?" "Beats me," Fletcher grunted, turning to walk back to his desk. But he didn't sound happy. A seed of unease was planted in Vance's mind, but he quickly dismissed it. The chief was a stickler for procedure. He probably just wanted to cross his T's and dot his I's. Then the main precinct line rang. Fletcher answered it, his voice already dripping with irritation. After a moment, his eyes went wide. He held the phone away from his ear, staring at it as if it were a venomous snake. "Who was it?" Tate asked, noticing the sudden change in the sergeant's demeanor. Fletcher swallowed hard, his face pale. That was Colonel Hargrove's office from the state police." Now Vance was paying attention. He stood up, The state police. What about? They wanted to confirm that a minor by the name of Kai Ellison was in our custody, Fletcher said, his voice barely a whisper. And they informed me that Governor Victor Ellison is personally en route to this precinct. The name hit the room like a physical blow. Governor Victor Ellison? Vance stared at Fletcher, his mind refusing to connect the dots. Ellison? No, no way. The kid in the cell. Tate felt the blood drain from his face. The name on the registration. He had not even processed it, just typed it into the system. Leonora Ellison, the mother. It all clicked into place with sickening clarity. He looked at Vance, whose cocky bravado had completely vanished, replaced by a ghastly ashen terror. Reelin', Tate whispered, his voice trembling. His dad. The sound of tires screeching to a halt in the parking lot cut through the sudden deathly silence of the bullpen. A car door slammed. Heavy, furious footsteps echoed on the pavement outside. Sergeant Fletcher looked like he was about to have a heart attack. Vance stood frozen, his half-finished, falsified report glowing on the screen in front of him, a digital monument to the single worst decision of his life. The ticking bomb had just gone off. Chief Warren Donovan burst through the doors, his face a thunderous mask of fury and panic. His eyes scanned the room, landing on the three shell-shocked officers. "Where is he?" Donovan roared, his voice shaking the windows. "Where is the governor's son?" Chief Donovan's presence filled the precinct with an immediate suffocating pressure. He was a man who was usually calm and collected, a politician in a police uniform. To see him this way, his face flushed with rage, his eyes burning with a terrifying intensity, sent a shockwave through the room. He did not wait for an answer to his own question. He stormed past the booking desk, his gaze fixed on the hallway leading to the holding cells. "Get him out of there now," he bellowed over his shoulder at a stunned Sergeant Fletcher. Fletcher fumbled for his keys, his hands shaking so badly he could barely fit the correct one into the lock. He hurried down the hallway with Donovan right on his heels. Vance and Tate stood rooted to the spot, paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of their blunder. The sound of the cell door being unlocked echoed back into the bullpen. Kai, who had been sitting with his head in his hands, looked up, startled. He saw the portly desk sergeant and, behind him, a man in a suit whose face was a storm of conflicting emotions. "Kai Ellison?" Chief Donovan asked, his voice suddenly softer, though still strained. "I'm Chief Donovan. There has been a terrible mistake. Please come with me." Kai stood up slowly, his mind reeling. He was escorted out of the cell and back into the main room where he saw them, Officer Vance and Officer Tate, standing like statues, their faces pale and slick with sweat. Vance's eyes met his for a fraction of a second, and in them Kai did not see arrogance or authority. He saw pure, unadulterated fear. Get this young man his property. Get him a drink of water. Get him anything he needs, Donovan ordered Fletcher, his voice regaining its sharp edge as he turned his attention to the two officers who had caused the catastrophe. He strode toward them, his steps slow and deliberate, each one landing like a hammer blow. He stopped directly in front of Vance. "My office, both of you." "5 minutes," he said through clenched teeth. He then turned to Kai. "Young man, I cannot begin to express how sorry I am. We are going to sort this out. Your father is on his way." The mention of his father sent another jolt through Kai. It was real. His dad was coming. The cavalry was actually on its way. As Fletcher returned his wallet, keys, and phone, Kai was led to the chief's office. It was a spacious room filled with plaques and commendations that now seemed like relics from another era. He sat in a plush visitor's chair, the soft leather a stark contrast to the cold metal bench of the cell. A few minutes later, Vance and Tate entered, their movements stiff and robotic. They stood before the chief's desk like schoolboys awaiting punishment. Donovan sat behind his desk, his hands steepled, his expression grim. "I just got off the phone with the governor," Donovan began, his voice deceptively calm. He was, shall we say, displeased. "He told me his son was arrested for carrying a palette knife." "Officer Vance, that was your arrest. Please enlighten me." Vance swallowed hard. Chief, with all due respect, the suspect was uncooperative. He was in an area with recent break-ins, and he was carrying what could be construed as a weapon, a palette knife. Donovan interrupted, his voice rising. Are you telling me that you, a veteran, cannot tell the difference between a weapon and an art tool? Did you find anything else on him? Anything illegal at all? No, sir, but nothing. Donovan slammed his hand on the desk, making all three men jump. You arrested a kid with no record for no reason, based on a lie about a broken taillight. Don't think I won't check the dash cam footage, and you trumped up a charge because you didn't like the look of him. Is that about the size of it? Tate stared at the floor, his silence a confession. Vance, however, tried one last time to salvage his story. Sir, my report details the probable cause. Your report? Donovan laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. Your report is toilet paper. Your career, Officer Vance, is hanging by a single frayed thread. And you, he said, turning his glare on Tate, you stood by and let it happen. You co-signed this disaster. Before either officer could respond, the door to the office opened. A state trooper in a sharp uniform stood in the doorway, his expression stoic. He stepped aside and Governor Victor Ellison walked into the room. The air crackled with a new and terrifying energy. The governor's eyes immediately found his son. He rushed to Kai's side, pulling him into a fierce hug, a father's embrace that was both protective and profoundly relieved. Are you okay, son? Did they hurt you? He asked, his voice slow and urgent. I'm okay, Dad, just shaken up, Kai replied, his own voice thick with emotion. After a long moment, the governor released his son. He straightened his suit jacket, and when he turned to face Chief Donovan and the two officers, his expression was no longer that of a concerned father. It was the face of a man who held the power of the entire state in his hands, and that power was now focused like a laser on them. The weight of what they had done in all its horrific, career-ending glory finally crashed down upon Ryland Vance and Evan Tate. They were not just in trouble, they were ruined. The silence in Chief Donovan's office was absolute, broken only by the hum of a computer monitor. Governor Ellison stood beside his son, one hand resting protectively on Kai's shoulder. His gaze swept over the two officers, Vance and Tate, and lingered there. It was not a look of explosive rage, but something far more chilling, a calm, methodical dissection. He was sizing them up, not as a politician, but as a predator assesses a threat. Chief Donovan, the governor began, his voice a low, resonant baritone that commanded immediate attention. I believe I am owed an explanation, but first, I want to see the report. The one Officer Vance was so diligently fabricating. The word fabricating hung in the air like poison. Chief Donovan slid a freshly printed copy of Vance's report across his desk. The governor picked it up, his eyes scanning the first few lines. A muscle twitched in his jaw. He read aloud, his voice dripping with icy contempt. Upon observing a vehicle with a non-functioning tail light, I initiated a standard traffic stop. The driver, later identified as Kai Ellison, displayed unusual nervousness and provided evasive answers to routine questions. He lowered the paper and looked directly at Vance. Officer Vance, my son's tail light is fully functional. I know this because I helped him replace the bulb myself recently. I have also seen your department's dash cam policy. I trust the footage from your vehicle will corroborate your statement. Vance's face, already pale, turned a shade of gray. He knew, and everyone in the room knew, that the dash cam would show a perfectly working light. His foundation, the very pretext for the stop, was a lie. I may have been mistaken about the light, Governor, Vance stammered, but his demeanor was suspicious. Suspicious. The governor countered, taking a step forward. My son has been taught, since he was a boy, how to behave when stopped by the police. He knows to be respectful, to keep his hands visible, to answer questions clearly. A behavior you might interpret as nervousness, I would interpret as the terror of a young black man who knows that a routine stop can become a death sentence. A terror, it seems, that was entirely justified tonight. He turned his piercing gaze on Tate. Officer Tate, you were there. Did you witness this suspicious demeanor? Tate looked up, his eyes wide with panic. He glanced at Vance, then at the governor. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The truth was a boulder in his throat. The governor did not wait for an answer. He turned the page of the report. Let's move on. A search of the vehicle's interior revealed a concealed modified blade approximately 6 inches in length. A palette knife. He let the words hang in the air. You arrested my son for being an artist. It could be used as a weapon. Vance blurted out, a desperate edge to his voice. A fork could be used as a weapon. Officer. The governor shot back. A pen? A set of keys. You did not arrest him because he had a dangerous tool. You arrested him because he was a black kid in a neighborhood you felt he did not belong in. You saw him and you decided he was guilty. You built this entire tower of lies to justify a decision you made in a split second of pure, unadulterated prejudice. He tossed the report onto Donovan's desk. It landed with a soft, damning thud. This is not about my son being the governor's son, he continued, his voice dropping again to that dangerous quiet level. If he were anyone else's son, he would be sitting in that cell right now. He might have been coerced into a plea bargain tomorrow. His life could have been irrevocably damaged by your gut feeling. This stops tonight. He turned to Chief Donovan. Chief, I want both of these officers suspended, effective immediately. Their firearms and badges are to be surrendered before I leave this building. I expect a full, transparent, and exhaustive internal affairs investigation, and I want the state's attorney general to oversee it personally to ensure there is no departmental bias. Yes, Governor, Donovan said, his voice grim. And let me be perfectly clear, the governor added, his eyes locking onto Vance's one last time. If this investigation finds that you falsified a police report, I will ensure you are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Your career in law enforcement is over. The only question now is whether you will end it with a pension or with a prison sentence. The finality of his words was absolute. There was no room for argument, no space for appeal. It was a declaration of war on their actions delivered with the cold precision of a surgeon. Governor Ellison put his arm around Kai. Come on, son. Let's go home. As they walked out of the office, Kai glanced back. He saw Chief Donovan taking the badges from two men who looked utterly broken. In that moment, he felt a sliver of pity, but it was quickly eclipsed by a profound sense of relief. The cold fury of his father had done more than just rescue him. It had started a fire that promised to burn away the corruption that had put him in that cell in the first place. Following his release, the Northwood Police Department became a fortress under siege, not from the outside, but from within. Governor Ellison was true to his word. The senior investigators from the Attorney General's office, led by a sharp, no-nonsense detective named Claire Ramsey, had arrived. They requisitioned Chief Donovan's conference room, turning it into a command center for the investigation. Their mandate was clear and absolute. Find the truth, no matter where it led. Detective Ramsey began with the evidence. The first thing she reviewed was the dash cam footage from Vance and Tate's patrol car. The video was damningly clear. As the cruiser pulled up behind Kai's sedan, both taillights were visibly illuminated, glowing a steady, healthy red against the dark asphalt. The audio captured Vance's initial comment to Tate. Look at this guy. Doesn't belong here? Let's see what he's up to. It was the smoking gun. The proof that the entire stop was pretextual, born from bias, before a single word had been exchanged. Ramsey's next step was to interview Vance and Tate separately. Vance arrived with a police union representative, a belligerent man who immediately tried to control the interview. Ramsey was unfazed. She calmly laid a transcript of the dash cam audio on the table in front of them. Officer Vance, she began, her tone neutral. Your report states the reason for the stop was a non-functioning taillight. This audio taken seconds before you activated your lights suggests a different motivation. Would you care to explain the discrepancy? Vance and his representative stared at the paper, their faces turning pale. The union rep began to bluster about context and the pressures of the job. But Ramsey cut him off. "This is not about pressure. This is about perjury," she stated coldly. "Falsifying an official report is a felony. Before we continue, I want to make it clear that you are being investigated not just for procedural violations, but for criminal conduct." Vance's carefully constructed wall of denial crumbled. He stammered, contradicted himself, and tried to paint Kai as hostile and threatening. But his lies were transparent against the stark reality of the video and audio evidence. He left the interview looking like a man who had seen a ghost. Tate's interview was a different story. He arrived alone, looking as though he had not slept in days. The guilt was etched on his face. When Ramsey presented him with the same evidence, he did not try to fight. He broke. "He does this," Tate confessed, his voice trembling. "Reelin', he calls it proactive policing. He sees someone he thinks is out of place, and he finds a reason, a tail light, a California stop, anything. He has a gut feeling and he makes the evidence fit." For the next 2 hours, Tate recounted not just the events of the previous night, but other similar incidents he had witnessed. He explained how he, as a junior officer, felt powerless to challenge a decorated veteran and his training officer. He admitted he knew the palette knife was harmless and that he remained silent out of fear for his career. "I knew it was wrong," he said, his voice thick with shame. When Kai looked at me, I knew, but I didn't do anything. I'm just as guilty." While the interviews were underway, the story inevitably leaked to the press. A source within the AG's office, or perhaps a disgruntled officer in the Northwood PD, tipped off a local news channel. By noon, the headline was everywhere: "Governor's son wrongfully arrested, officers suspended." The precinct was surrounded by news vans, their satellite dishes pointed at the sky like accusing fingers. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for the department's reputation. Chief Donovan was forced to hold a press conference where he was hammered with questions he could not fully answer. He looked haggard and defeated, announcing the ongoing state investigation and promising full cooperation and transparency. Meanwhile, the Ellison family was weathering their own storm. They were barraged with calls from friends, political allies, and opponents. Victor Ellison shielded his family as best he could, issuing a single powerful statement. "This incident has shed a harsh light on the reality that many in our communities face daily. This is not about my son's identity. It is about the abuse of power. I will be using my authority not just to seek justice for Kai, but to ensure that what happened to him happens to no one else in this state, regardless of who their father is." Kai found himself an unwilling symbol. His face was on every screen, but instead of hiding, he turned to his art. He locked himself in his room, not with charcoal and paint, but with a new furious energy. He began to sketch the flashing lights, the cold steel of the handcuffs, the mocking face of Officer Vance, and the despair of the holding cell. It was his way of processing the trauma, of turning his fear and anger into something tangible, something that could speak when words failed. The investigation was exposing the lies, but his art would tell the truth. As the investigation progressed, the investigation, led by Detective Ramsey, concluded with a report that was as meticulous as it was damning. It was a systematic deconstruction of Officer Rylan Vance's career, revealing a clear pattern of bias policing and falsified reports, particularly in stops involving minorities. Evan Tate's testimony, corroborated by the dashcam evidence and a review of past complaints that had been previously dismissed, painted an undeniable picture of corruption and abuse of power. The Attorney General, armed with the report, acted swiftly. Officer Rylan Vance was fired from the Northwood Police Department, his veteran career ending in disgrace. But it did not stop there. He was formally charged with multiple crimes: perjury, falsifying a government record, and a federal charge for the violation of Kai Ellison's civil rights. The good bus he had bragged about had become the nail in his coffin. Evan Tate, due to his full cooperation, faced a different fate. He was also terminated from the force, but the Attorney General declined to press criminal charges against him. In a public statement, the AG noted that, while Tate's inaction was a serious ethical failure, his testimony was crucial in securing the case against Vance and exposing a deeper problem. Tate left the state, his dream of a career in law enforcement shattered. A walking cautionary tale of the cost of complicity, Chief Warren Donovan, facing immense public and political pressure, tendered his resignation, while the investigation found no evidence that he was aware of Vance's specific actions. He took responsibility for the culture in his department that allowed such behavior to fester. The karma for Vance was stark and public. His trial was a media sensation. The dashcam footage was played for the jury and Tate was called as the prosecution's star witness. Vance's attempts to portray himself as a dedicated officer making tough calls fell apart under cross-examination. He was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. The image of the once arrogant officer being led away in handcuffs was broadcast across the nation, a powerful symbol of accountability. In the wake of the scandal, Governor Victor Ellison channeled his paternal fury into political action. He used the immense political capital gained from the incident to introduce a sweeping police reform bill, which he named the Ky Ellison Accountability Act. The bill mandated automatic review of all use of force incidents by an independent body, strength and penalties for falsifying reports, and funded de-escalation and implicit bias training for every officer in the state. After a fierce debate, the bill passed, becoming a landmark piece of legislation. Ky, once a private art student, stepped into his new role as a reluctant public figure with quiet grace. His first gallery show was titled Red and Blue. It featured a series of powerful raw charcoal drawings and oil paintings depicting his experience. The centerpiece was a haunting portrait of a young man's face, half illuminated by red light, the other by blue, his eyes reflecting the cold bars of a cell. The show was a critical and commercial success, and Ky pledged a portion of the proceeds to a fund for the legal defense of those wrongfully accused. He had been targeted for his race, judged by a man who saw a threat instead of a person. They had locked him up, believing he was just another statistic, but they had misjudged him, and they had profoundly underestimated his father. The scales of justice, once tipped so heavily by prejudice and power, had been brought crashing back down, a hard karmic lesson for all who had witnessed it. Ky Ellison was free, not just from the holding cell, but from the shadow of that night, having transformed his trauma into a testament for change. The seasons had changed not only the world outside, but the landscape of Ky Ellison's life. The name that had once been a whispered headline was now synonymous with a new movement in art, one that was bold, unflinching, and deeply narrative. His gallery, funded by the success of his Red and Blue exhibit, was a bright, airy space in the city's arts district, a testament to his resilience. He was no longer the boy in the back of the squad car. He was a man who had taken control of his own story. One crisp autumn afternoon, while curating a new show, his assistant handed him the mail. Among the gallery announcements and bills was a plain white envelope with no return address, postmarked from a town he recognized as the location of a federal penitentiary. His heart gave a slight involuntary lurch. He opened it. The letter was from Ryland Vance. The handwriting was cramped and angry. It was not a letter of apology. It was a venomous, self-pitying tirade. Vance wrote of his stolen career, his ruined life, and the injustice of his imprisonment. He accused Ky of using his father's power to exact a personal vendetta. "You and your father think you're heroes," the letter concluded, "but all you did was ruin a good cop's life over a misunderstanding. I hope you're happy." Ky read the letter twice. The first time a flicker of the old anger returned. The second time he felt nothing but a profound sense of pity. Vance had not learned a thing. He was still the same man, trapped in the same cycle of blame and prejudice. His prison was not just the one made of concrete and steel. It was the one he had built in his own mind, and he would likely never be free. Ky folded the letter, walked to the industrial shredder in his office, and fed it into the machine. He watched as Vance's bitter words were turned into meaningless confetti. He would not allow the man a single moment more of his energy. A week later, seeking refuge from the demands of the gallery, Kai was sketching in a small, quiet coffee shop downtown. As he went to the counter for a refill, he noticed the man working the espresso machine. He was thinner. His face was lined with a weariness that had not been there before, and he wore a simple apron instead of a police uniform. But there was no mistaking him. It was Evan Tate. Their eyes met. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Tate's face flooded with a mixture of shock and shame. He froze, his hand hovering over the steam wand. I'll have someone else get that for you. Tate stammered, turning away. It's okay, Kai said, his voice quiet but firm. I can wait. When the coffee was ready, Tate brought it to Kai's table, his hands trembling slightly. Look, Tate began, his voice low. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need to say this. I am sorry. What happened that night? It was wrong. I was a coward. I stood by and let my fear of one man outweigh what I knew was right. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about it. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just needed to say it. Kai studied his face. He saw no excuses, no attempt to minimize his role. He saw only genuine remorse. What are you doing now? Kai asked, gesturing to the coffee shop. Paying my dues, Tate said with a sad smile, trying to figure out who I am without a badge to hide behind. I'm taking night classes and social work. Maybe I can help people in a way I failed to before. Kai nodded slowly. He thought of Vance's letter, full of hate and blame, and then looked at Tate, who was taking responsibility and trying to build something new from the wreckage of his life. One man was consumed by the karma he had earned. The other was trying to atone for it. Good luck with your classes, Evan, Kai said finally. It was not forgiveness, not friendship, but it was an acknowledgement. It was closure. Tate gave a grateful, watery-eyed nod, and returned to the counter. Kai sat for a long time, the coffee growing cold. He realized the story was not just about punishment. It was also about the capacity for change. He left the coffee shop and walked back to his studio, feeling lighter than he had in years. That evening he stood before a massive new canvas. The sketches of his trauma were gone, replaced by vibrant studies of community, of faces filled with hope, strength, and complexity. The glare of red and blue had been replaced by a full spectrum of color. He picked up a brush, dipped it in a bright, warm yellow, and made the first mark. The past was a part of his story, but he alone would be the one to paint the future. What began with a lie about a broken tail, light ended with the complete dismantling of a corrupt officer's career and the dawn of a new era of police accountability. Kai Ellison's story is a stark reminder that injustice thrives in the dark, but it withers under the bright light of truth. Officer Vance believed his badge gave him absolute power, but he learned that true power lies in integrity and that karma has a way of finding those who abuse their authority. This was not just about the governor's son. It was about every citizen's right to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their background. If this story of justice and the powerful consequences of prejudice resonated with you, please help us share it by hitting the like button. Subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you will not miss our next story. And share this video with others because every share helps spread the message that no one is above the law. Thank you for listening.